Whether we been or yellow, whether we deep or shallow. Please me now, cause we're about to lose. Whether we buy or hello, whether we step or jello. I gotta move and make amends, but can't go through the same regrets. It could feel so good on mine. Not about love, again. And I know it's safe as well.
Morning.
We're waking up to find what's broken down. Is the truth among the wreckage that I forgot along the way? I know that I can't stay, but is there a part that I could hold? hold to if I get lost along the way. I believe in better days. I believe in better days. We lit up like a wildfire, you and I. We sent the sparrow surging into the night. By the light of the flames, wasting the place we knew we will find our way. And I believe in better days. 'Cause I believe in better days. From the places we're broken open, we know what to do. From the places we're broken open, we know what to do. From the places we're broken open, we'll find something new. And I believe in better days. 'Cause I believe in better days. 'Cause I believe in better days. And I believe in better days.
Y'all, don't be, I'm gonna do that thing where I say no offense, but y'all look like you're as tired as I am this morning. A little bit. Does anybody else feel like October is, and just like back to school and all these things are hitting harder this year? And I know we've all been through something collectively, but I don't know about you, but I'm tired. And I wanted to welcome you and say that's okay. It's okay to show up here tired. And I think for a lot of us, we grew up in contexts where that wasn't necessarily okay. You show up, you put on your big smile, you put on your best outfit, you show up and you be bright and shiny, and you don't have to be bright and shiny here. You came through the door, you made it. Whoever you are, wherever you came from, whatever your history is, however you feel about being here today, whether that's excited or sort of frustrated that you had to be here or sort of curious when it's going to be over, any of those things are welcome. You are welcome exactly as you are. You made it through the door, you did the thing. And if you want to stand with us while we sing, you're always welcome to. It helps us. If you feel comfortable doing it, go for it. But if you don't, feel free to stay seated. Feel free to close your eyes. Feel free to be here however you need to be here today. We're glad you're here. Hi, online friends.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? Well, let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know will take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, and when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around, so you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
There's a place where we don't have to feel alone. And every time that you call out, you're a little less at home. If you only say a word, you come across the silence, your voice is heard.
And oh, someone will come running, and I know will take you home. Even when the dark is crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you reach up and you rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found. You will be found. Yes, you will be found. You will be found. So even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found. You will be found. Yes, you will be found. You will be found.
There's a thing that takes place here in this room that we haven't found a way to rename yet. This church does a lot of renaming things, and in the churches that we all grew up in, it was called worship, and I don't really like that word anymore. Some of the old words we keep, that one, it doesn't quite name the thing for me that we do here, and yet I can't deny that something still happens in this space when we gather together. Other human bodies in the same space as us, singing and dancing. For me, it still feels like it did in my little child Pentecostal bones, just dancey and open and arms in the air, and that might look weird to you because you're like, I thought I saw on the website that it's a progressive church, but the pastor's up there going, woo, dancing. But it's because I just know that there's still something in our bodies when we gather that takes place. And I don't know what it's called, but I just wanted to name that out loud for you today. That we still find there to be a reason to come together and to sing and to intentionally name ourselves holy in this space together. So welcome to that practice, whatever we're going to call it. It takes me like 8 sentences to describe it, which isn't very convenient. Worship is easier. But I just want to name that I love that you're here and that we can still do this thing together awkwardly. Okay, that's a weird transition, but I was just feeling it in the moment because it is now time for house notes. Another weird practice we do. I don't know, you guys. Okay, our few house notes are, I'm going to follow the screen. First time here, there are a few info cards out on the front table there. If you need or would like to just check in with us, you can fill it out and stick it in the box. And it just alerts us to your email address so that we can send you some information that you might need. When those newsletters go out, that's kind of the best place to get information about what's happening here and what's coming up next. And then Joy Box. Another weird practice we do here, you all. Instead of passing the plate in front of you and kind of making it awkward and all eyes on, we've never done that at Sojourn, but we still do run this place on dollars. And so if you can give from a place of joy, we just invite you to do that really just online right now. So it's at sojourngrace.com/donate. You can do that, and you support this mission of wholeness, spiritual, emotional, and social wholeness when you do so. And then, our next, and Venmo, I should have said that. And then lastly, Sojo's moving, if you missed that last week. Our physical location is moving. All y'all, I love you, just stay put. We're not leaving Facebook and YouTube. But our physical location is moving to North Park, which we are so excited about. North Park is where we started. It's so much easier to access off of freeways. It's a more central location. And most importantly, the two most important things, I think, are that it will be a relief for those of us who set up in the morning, because all of this stuff that you see will not have to be pulled out of closets and drawers and sleighs and set up every week. Yes. It's very exciting. And then secondly, the kids' space, coming out of COVID and kids going back to school full-time, wearing masks all day, every day. It is hard to then on Sundays bring them to church as well. And at our new space, there are fully outdoor spaces that if kids never step foot inside the entire time on Sundays, that is perfectly good. And so that feels really important right now too, to just give them space to be in outdoor fresh air with each other, running around playing. I'm excited about those two things. So that will be our first Sunday of actually gathering there, November 7th at 10. Oh, I love that we're moving to 10 a.m. 11 is hard. It's a weird spot in the day. That's it for house notes, right? Okay, so we're going to move to collective conversation. Stephen, will you join me today for awkward conversation time? Sweet. Could you give me YouTube again? Is that possible for you? Can you give me YouTube? It's a weird question. Oh, you know what I don't have, baby?
A microphone?
Nope, I have a microphone, and you have a microphone.
Oh,
the
questions.
Basket of questions. I mean, we could just ask them whatever we want.
A lot of power right there.
It is. Hi, loves. Hi, Robin. Hi, Donna. Hi, Susan. Sorry, just checking in with everybody online. I haven't had a chance to say hi yet. Hi, Alexa. Hi, Kaylee. Oh, Kate is very quiet today, Kaylee says. Did we figure that out? Am I just being soft-spoken? Oh, sweet. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, Kaylee. All right.
Are you ready for this?
I've got Facebook. I've got YouTube. We're all set. Hi, YouTubers. Hi, Shane. Hi, Joey. Hi, Marie. I love that you all are here with us, and this is just how we've figured out a way to connect with everyone through online and in-person space, and it's real awkward and it's fun. Oh, God.
It's
you
a good
picked
one.
it. You ask it.
So the question is, who inspires you?
No big deal.
Teachers, parents?
Yeah. Who inspires? You can go so many ways with that. Do you have an inspiration, Vicki?
Kids?
Just kids in general? I love that. Vicki said kids. Oh, and you in the room, just shout out your thoughts anytime. Simone Biles. Nice.
All right, I like it.
Same.
Simone Biles, for those that didn't hear it.
Yeah, very.
Wesley, who inspires you?
Aww.
Good answer.
Is that why you asked her?
I knew she'd say it if I asked her.
Aww. I love you, Wes. What are people saying on here? Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Well, that's a good one.
I love that.
R.I.P.
My 2 adult daughters. I love that, Shauna. That's pretty awesome. Oh, people are talking about other things. It always is a delay on the...
Yeah, that like 15, 20 seconds.
Yes, it's
fun.
like, come on, answer. Richard Rohr, Matthew. Is that Matthew like our Matthew, who's not here today, but normally is?
Pretty inspirational.
Oh, Kaylee said her wife, Alexa. That's pretty sweet. We've got a Sarah Bessie. Our YouTubers are asleep today. Hi, YouTubers. I see you there. I see your names and the count watching, but you're not answering the question. Hi, I love you. Good to see you. Let me know. Mr. Rogers, yes. Dude, yes. Also, Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers is also
actually,
an inspiration. The Avett brothers inspire me. I'm going to see them tonight. That's why I said that. Oh, yes, she said Matthew, our Matthew. Yeah. Anybody else in the room? People haven't really shouted out in the room. Dolly Parton?
She's one of those ones that just keeps getting better. Like, the more you learn about her, just the better she is.
I was trying to explain to my kids the other day, not so much explain to them Dolly Parton, because you can't really do that, but I was trying to explain to them the fact that she would be so much higher on the list of rich people if she didn't give away so much of her money, and they were just like, huh?
I just recently learned some of the things she did with the royalties she made from Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You.
Yep.
Pretty awesome.
Pretty amazing. Pretty
She reinvested in the communities, like instead of taking it and just making more money for her, she put it into like lower income communities that really just needed the help, which was pretty awesome. I know, so Dolly. Funding vaccines, like all of it.
Yeah. YouTube woke up. They say, Marie says, my sponsor and the people in the rooms. I love that. It's amazing. Shane says, I think how wonderful many people really are, and as far as specific, not entirely sure at the moment. I like your very honest answer, Shane. Camille says, my wife, my friends, my ancestors, and then she commented again and said, and Beyonce. Yes.
Almost goes without saying.
100%. One of the most fun concerts I ever went to.
I bet. Super fun.
And the longest ride home getting out of that parking lot. Oh, more Sarah Bessies. People are inspired by Sarah Bessie today.
I don't even know
you
who
wanna
Sarah
do
Bessie is.
Really? She's an author up in the Canada. It's always good to come back to this one. This is just a good practice. What are you most grateful for right in this moment? We'll just do some gratitude practice today. Get us moving.
About a month early for Thanksgiving. Coffee.
Coffee. Always
Word.
grateful for coffee, and especially in this moment for sure. We were just lamenting how hard it is to sip coffee out in public now. Like, that was one of my biggest practices, was going through grocery stores and just sipping coffee while I was in the store, and now it's like, oh, can't get to my mouth. It doesn't work. Same as at church. All right, what are y'all so grateful for? Kaylee, is that your response? My person? My clients? Sojo? Aw, you're sweet.
I love San Diego weather. I'm always reminded how lucky we have it here
Yeah, same.
on a day like today.
Same. Yeah. I love that. Safe spaces was the answer, in case you didn't hear that. Hi, Viet. Did you say growing community? Growing community. I love that. Friends and family. Robin says, grateful for Sojo and the doctors at the UCI hospital right now, keeping Paul alive. Our dear friend Paul is in the hospital right now with a brain infection. We love you, Paul, and we're praying for you. We're holding space for you. Melanie says, grateful for biological family and church family. We love you, Melanie. So grateful for our faraway church members. Like, how fun is that we have
awesome.
We have church in England, we have church across the country, and oh my goodness, it's just so fun.
It's pretty great.
Old friends who are still close friends. I love that. Being on my couch with my cat, not having anywhere I need to go. That's the best. I still get grateful for that, even though we had like a year of only being able to do
Going
that.
nowhere.
Still makes me happy when I don't have to go anywhere.
I'm grateful for Wesley's school start time of 9:15. Oh. That's huge.
We're like clapping for that. Everyone's like,
We're not early
thunderous
risers.
applause. Yes, that's amazing. Having virtual church is an option. I am so glad you're grateful for that, because I agree. It's so helpful for... Hi, baby.
Grateful for puppies.
Michelle.
She ran.
Sojo dogs.
Yep.
Yes.
Sojo dogs.
Yes, I know. Oh, and then Holly hopped on and said, grateful for international church family. Holly's over in England right now. Right now. Always, that's where she lives.
right now.
Yeah. Karen says, yoga by my pool, healthy-ish body. I like the ish. I love that. That's good. And a husband home from New York. I love that. Man, y'all are so grateful. I want to read like every comment, but I'm just glad that you have so much gratitude in your hearts. Oh, we've got nature, time. Even though we're in the midst of a move, we have really given bits of time and places we really needed it. That's me too, Shane. I always feel the same way as Shane when Shane comments. I don't know what it is. I think we're the same human. But that's literally my life right now too. In the middle of a move, but so grateful for still enjoying life while it happens.
And
Okay.
then you have a great spot to go to.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank God. Feels like a miracle. Okay. I love you all. That has been Collective Conversation. Francesca is speaking of England, our Francesca is in England for a few weeks. And so I am going to hang out with kiddos today. Anybody who wants to can come with me up the stairs. And you kids are always welcome to stay in service for as long as you want and just chill in here. It's your space too. We don't do like adults are allowed here and kids are allowed here. You be wherever you want. But I am going to go upstairs if you want to come with me and come hang out. We'll just do crafts and hang for a while. And then we're all going to come back down and join for communion together in a few minutes. Thanks for being awkward with us.
Always.
Where's the bumper when you need one?
Watch over us. Watch over us. When my hands are tied, when my strength is gone, Mama, your baby is shrouded in sorrow. So you've had your time. But who has tomorrow? So watch over us. Watch over us. Father, your sickness lives here in me. I don't need no crown. I don't need no glory. So you've had your life. That ain't my story. Sometimes I'm moved, sometimes I'm dead, sometimes I'm almost level to the ground. But my baby's sleeping in peace. So watch over us. Watch over us.
Fun facts, by the way. This is my younger brother, Logan. Before we go into this next song, I'm going to invite you, if you would like, to close your eyes. Not because there's anything special or magical about it, but because it helps eliminate distraction and focus and center us. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that is magical as I say it out loud. And if you can, or if you want, locate the part on your body that reminds you most of your current aliveness. What do I mean by that? Well, for me, that's like a hand on my diaphragm, because that's where I feel my breath going, inhaling and exhaling. Maybe for you, it's on your chest. Maybe you feel your pulse on your wrist or on your neck. But locate that spot where you are suddenly aware of your aliveness. And let's take a deep breath in together. And let it out. That last song of this refrain, watch over us. Watch over us. And for me, it's like this open-handed posture to whatever might be out there or whatever might be in here, whatever is ultimately. It's this pleading, this longing, this hope. There's really a hope, a cry of hope for me. Watch over us. Not as some distant deity who controls all of the pieces of earth like a chessboard, but I don't know, maybe like a parent in the best sense of the word. This watching, loving, guiding, nurturing presence. Take a deep breath in and out. And then we're about to sing a song here where the refrain is looking forward to someday soon. Someday. Someday. And I'm reminded of the biblical witness of this history of hundreds of years of people who are looking ahead someday. Those who by faith didn't get to see the tangible, practical evidence of that which they hoped for, and yet hope they did still. And I know that some of us here have complicated relationships with the Bible. That makes a ton of sense. I am one of you. And also that part of it I feel like I can relate to. Someday. This relationship that has caused me so much pain in the past and hurt and does not feel resolved, it does not feel healed. Someday. This baggage that I carry from my past trauma that is still impacting how I deal with every day, it feels someday soon enough. The injustices that seem to be piling on top of each other at a global level and at a national level, someday. Take a deep breath in and out. With the posture of openness, we say, watch over us. And we say, someday. Someday.
There is a shadow in the hallway trying to frighten you. Don't let the darkness surround you. You can make it through. Don't you give up on the kingdom. Think it's crashing in. No, it ain't worth all the worry. They'll still let you in. Someday soon these worries roll on. Someday soon enough. Sometimes the weight of decisions will try to bury you. Don't let the shame tell you something that you know ain't true. Just 'cause you feel like a stranger, see, that don't mean you are. God, I could use a reminder of what forgiveness is for. Someday soon these worries roll on. Someday soon enough. Sometimes the cold wind blows, sometimes the wolves rush in. Don't think the battle's over just 'cause you said amen. Someday soon these worries roll on. Someday soon enough. Someday soon these worries roll on. Someday soon enough. Sometimes the cold wind blows, sometimes the wolves rush in. Don't think the battle's over just 'cause you say amen. Sometimes the cold wind blows, sometimes the wolves rush in. Don't think the battle's over just 'cause you say amen.
Have you Have you ever found yourself, whether maybe you've been coming here for a while, or maybe you're relatively new, I wonder if you found yourself in the context of Sojourn, whether it's looking at our website or listening to past podcasts or sitting here on a Sunday morning. I wonder if you've ever found yourself thinking, how come Sojourn kind of feels like a church? And sometimes kind of not so much. Or maybe the question of, okay, you call yourself a Christian church, like a progressive Christian church? Like, but are you? What is that? Those are really good questions, none of which can be resolved or addressed in the next 20 minutes or so. But I did think, because we've got, in the last year or so, we've welcomed so many of you new folks virtually, and even since we've reopened, we've seen a sort of constant, steady flow of new faces. I thought, okay, maybe we'll start to unpack a little bit about this, who we are and why we do what we do a little bit. Like, yes, we are a church, and yes, we do identify as a Christian church, and yet it makes a ton of sense that sometimes those things feel different. So here's how I want to address it today. And I begin with this. I have mixed feelings about organized religion. Okay? And so you can exhale if that also feels like, oh, okay, I do too. I have mixed feelings when it comes to organized religion. On the one hand, I get it. And what I mean by I get it is, on the one hand, like when the idea for something captures the imagination of an individual or a small group of people, and it begins to radically shape who they are, how they function in the world, and what they want to do. We know from studying social movements, we know that in order for a movement, you might call it, which is sort of the capturing of the imagination of a small group of people, in order for a thing to move from a movement to something more than just capturing the imagination of a few people, you have to make a transition into institutionalizing. I shouldn't say nobody. We don't often like this move from a movement to an institution, but unless that happens, which is to say, unless you coalesce around certain ideas and unless you create some sort of structure for leadership or create some sort of policies, then the movement just dissipates and dissolves, and it's gone. It becomes this flash in a pan of some things that capture people's imagination for a little bit, but it never sort of grew into something that could outlast itself. And I always point back to Occupy Wall Street as a really good example of this incredible movement that never figured out how to move into institution. And so on the one hand, we don't like organized religion, we don't like institutions for reasons I'll say in a minute, but on the other hand, they're kind of necessary. They're kind of necessary in order to have any sort of lasting impact. And so in this way, organized religion, specifically I would argue Christianity maybe, or just maybe because it's our context, is, you might say, a necessary adaptation for preserving and disseminating the teachings of Jesus. Had those early followers not sort of done what they needed to do to turn the movement into something that had lasting impact, then we wouldn't be here today. Or it wouldn't be here today. And maybe that's fine. Maybe something else would have sort of taken over the vacuum of that space. But my point is, organized religion, for me, is not inherently bad just because it's organized religion. But on the other hand, and I can feel some of you going there, because this work of going from a movement to an institution is done by humans, there's always the possibility, maybe even the probability, for things to go wrong, for bad actors to get involved, for things to get mucked up. Maybe it's the pursuit of fame, maybe it's the pursuit of influence, money, admiration, power, I don't know. Maybe it's the fear of failure, maybe it's the fear of losing something. There's lots of reasons why, but institutions of all kinds, not just religion, of all kinds, will always possess the capacity to do immense good and immense harm. This is why I say I have mixed feelings about organized religion. On the one hand, it kind of makes sense we need it to preserve the gains of a movement, and on the other hand, it can become this sort of cesspool for things to go wrong. And we've seen that happen, and we know what that feels like. I think that one of the ways that institutions, so here's, as I've been thinking about this as it relates to Sojourn, one of the ways that institutions, and this is especially true of religion, can increase the likelihood that they will do more good than harm, which I would hope is the hope for an institution, to do more good than harm, is to have this regular built-in assessment and self-critique. To be able to constantly ask of oneself as an institution, have we strayed from our original, the thing that captured the imagination of the early foundation? Have we strayed from that? If so, in what way and why? Or how might our current context demand that we adapt and evolve as an institution? Because the thing might have started in one context and culture, but over time, it's going to change, and so adaptation and transformation is required. And so religion and institutions need to constantly be in this sort of self-critique mode and posture. Now, scholars on religion have often noted, and I love this, that one of the unique features of ancient Judaism is this sort of self-critique. And this is what the tradition of the prophets give to us, this centuries-long practice of men and women, even though we don't have enough of their voices recorded, men and women who are saying, hey, we are off course here. We have lost track of the plot. We are far from where we had wanted to be when we set out for this thing. This is one of the gifts that the Jewish religion has given to us. And I agree with those who maintain that Jesus was in that line of prophetic tradition, which is to say Jesus also was a self-critiquing individual for his religion. And this is really what his point was. His point wasn't to start a new religion. I think we know that. His point was to try and reform Judaism. To reform Judaism. His constant clashing with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the high priests is sort of the evidence that he was coming up against the religion of his day to say, we have gotten off course. It's time we need to change. You might remember him saying things like, you've heard it said, but I say to you. This is what we've been told for many, many years, but I say, and so on. And so I've been thinking about this lately, and at the risk of offending some of the Christians in the room, and some of the Christians online, at the risk of offending some of us, my sense is that I think Jesus modeled how to critically engage with our religious heritage more so than Jesus intended to utter the institutional final word. Say that again. I think Jesus modeled for us what it looks like to practice this prophetic posture of self-critiquing one's religion more so than I think Jesus' intent was to let me give the final institutional word that can now be cemented in a new set of stone tablets, not to be changed or edited. His expectation was that his disciples would continue on this mission of reform, in my opinion. But not for the sake of eventually arriving at a perfect state and then locking it in. Guys, just give it a couple hundred more years, and then once you hit 363 after me, then just lock it in. You've achieved institutional perfection and preserve no matter what happens. No, I don't think this was ever the intent. Culture changes, technology changes, and all of this inevitably puts internal and external pressures on institutions like religions to evolve. Jesus told his friends, you're going to do even greater things than you've seen me do. I don't think Jesus planned to be the institutional final word of all the thing. He said, you're going to do greater things than I have done. Jesus told his friends, whatever you guys end up binding on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you end up loosing on earth will be loosed in heaven. Which is a sort of a fanciful way of saying, what you do matters, and you'll get to sort of choose and decide how that works, and it will have some impact. He said weird things like, hey, after I'm gone, my Father in heaven's going to send a helper to you. Again, I don't think Jesus was like, let me tell you everything that there is to know, and then lock this in and preserve just in perpetuity. My point is that I don't think Jesus intended to be the final word. Rather, he intended to model, among other things, a particular relationship or a particular posture that we might have toward our religious heritage and community. So I think that we follow in Jesus' footsteps, which for me is not a bad way to describe Christian, just someone who tries to be like Jesus. I think we follow in Jesus' footsteps when we ask of our religion, where have we gotten off course? Where have we added unnecessary burdens to people? You know that part where Jesus accused the Pharisees of like adding burdens to people? And then he said that line that many of us might remember, like, take my yoke, learn from me. It's my yoke's easy. My burden, this should not be heavy. When we ask where has the mission of the movement been obscured by some of the, I would argue, necessary trappings of the institution, when that's happened, how can we reveal the mission once again? How can we get back to the heart of it? This is where I think we follow in Jesus' footsteps when we do those sorts of things to religion. So in our own small way at Sojourn, that's part of the work that we have aimed to do for over 7 years and will continue to aim to do. Our assumption is that all things were not sorted out 2,000 years ago, and now we just need to keep injecting sacred formaldehyde into the corpse of ancient Christianity. Just lock it down and hold it. And I'm really glad some of you like that sacred formaldehyde in the corpse, because that was my favorite line of the whole sermon, and I wanted to make sure I said it. If you're here, odds are you're here because you are aware of the phenomenon that our religion, our Christian tradition, has a lot of really ugly stains on it. Like we know this, and some of us know it intellectually, many of us know it bodily. Our religion has lost sight of its roots in many, many ways. In its efforts to move from or evolve from a movement to an institution that could preserve some of these gains and lock in some of these values, we've left a lot of pain and suffering in our wake. As I think about it, in our religious tradition's mode of self-preservation, maybe we call it, we've seen it sidle up to empire, which was kind of counterproductive for the original ethos of the movement. We have seen leaders in our religion chase after power to the extent of the weakest, which is like the invert of what I think Jesus was originally trying to help people understand. So anyway, here at Sojourn, my point is this. As best as we can, we try to speak truth to power when power has been corrupted, and that includes our own church here, and that includes the larger culture. At Sojourn, we try to dismantle toxic theology when ideas about God lead people away from love and away from compassion rather than toward it. At Sojourn, we try to cast new visions, which are oftentimes rooted in ancient methodology. We can update some of the methodology. Like we know a lot more about emotional well-being, for instance. But ancient wisdom, we cast new visions for how community can be experienced with vulnerability and authenticity and grace. We try to do that here at Sojourn. And here at Sojourn, we try to stay connected. We try to stay connected to our religious heritage enough so that we can, as Pastor Kate said in a message 2 years ago, so that we can have 1 foot in the boat and 1 foot on shore so that we can still rock the boat kind of from within. Like, so we're still connected to this thing in some way so that we can still rock it from within. How we do this is not always obvious. We don't always do it well. We don't always do it efficiently. We don't always do it effectively. And whether or not we should keep doing it, and by keep doing it, I mean trying to reform, that isn't always obvious either. Like, we still, to this point, feel like, yes, we are a Christian church. We need to stay 1 foot in the boat, reform, all that. But there are days, and I'm sure have either felt this or this is maybe already part of your story. There are days where you're like, yeah, I'm out. I love that our church still sort of collectively identifies with this, and I'm all for that. But me personally, like I'm out. That's not where I'm at. And we have many people in our community that are in that space. And it makes a ton of sense to me. There's the story in Matthew chapter 15 where, as I read it, Jesus is doing this self-critiquing of his own religion paired with this casting of a vision for what could be. So I want to quickly share this story with you that some of you might remember. And it happened when some Pharisees and some legal experts confronted Jesus about how his disciples were not following proper ritualistic procedures as it relates to washing their hands before eating. I know, it's kind of like the CDC from 2,000 years early, right? So Matthew 15, verse 1, the Pharisees and legal experts, they came to Jesus and they said, "Why are your disciples breaking the elders' rules? Why are your disciples breaking the elders' rules that were handed down to us? They're not ritually purifying their hands by washing before they eat." Now, the context here is a bit much to explore for today, but the gist of it is this. Here's all that you need to know for this point, I think, is that just prior to Jesus' time, we're talking just a couple decades, there existed in Judaism two main schools of thought as it related to how to interact with the Torah. There was the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel. And with a few exceptions, generally speaking, the school of Shammai was a much more stricter, more conservative approach to the Torah and the law, whereas the school of Hillel was a bit more liberal and loose. For example, the school of Shammai believed that only worthy students could study the Torah, whereas the school of Hillel was like, I think anybody can study the Torah. Shammai believed that all white lies were wrong. There is no space for nuance. Any sort of white lie is wrong. The school of Hillel is like, look, sometimes, as Hillel famously said, all brides look beautiful on their wedding day. There you go. Shammai's like, no, if they're not beautiful, you don't say it. Shammai said an eye for an eye means an actual eye for an actual eye. Hillel's like, well, can you take the value of an eye and replace it with something comparable? So you can see how there's these two different approaches. And each of the schools that arose in these teachers' name sort of more extremely pushed the teaching into the far extremes, which I know in our culture is very unusual. Like, we don't get what this is like. We're so used to being able to talk in this middle ground. But Shammai and Hillel might not have been super different from each other, but the schools that rose up in that pushed it farther and farther to these margins. So you could say that the school of Shammai, their motto is "we are right," whereas the school of Hillel's motto is "you may be right." Okay, so this is the context, this is the background that a lot of Jesus's teachings interact with, and with a few exceptions, most of the time Jesus would sort of fall in the school of Hillel's reading of things. When it came to the laws of ritual purity for the priests, Shammai advocated for very strict and stringent standards for what it took to become clean enough so that you could eat the sacred bread. They had all this levels of cleanliness and purity. Are you level 1 impure? Are you level 2 impure? Shammai had all of these very specific how you do the ritual here. And I think Hillel was like, well, if you can just wipe it off on your toga, then you're fine. Toga? Is that the right word? What am I in? Phi Beta Kappa. So Jesus, more or less, like I said, followed with Hillel. But where I'm trying to get with this is that during Jesus' public ministry, Shammai had convinced the Sanhedrin, another overly jargon word, which is just the ruling class of the temple, had convinced the Sanhedrin to go with Shammai. So your typical Pharisee and legal expert and priest were in the Shammai mindset during the time of Jesus. And all of this helps explain why then these Pharisees come to Jesus with this, why are your followers, why are your disciples not following the elders' rule, the tradition that's been passed on to us to wash their hands before they eat? Verse 3, Jesus says back to them, well, why do you break the commands of God by keeping the rules handed down to you? The Pharisees say, why do your disciples break the elders' rules? And Jesus' response is, why do you break God's rules in favor of elders' rules? Kind of holds up this mirror to them, and he gives them an example of how they've created this loophole in the ancient laws. And he goes on, listen to this, verse 4. Jesus says, for God said, sort of painting back to their ancient value of the law, God said, honor your father and your mother. And the person who speaks against father and mother will certainly be put to death. Jesus says, but then you have created this loophole where if someone says to their father or mother, hey, look, everything that I'm supposed to give to you, mom and dad, I'm going to go ahead and give to God as a gift, then suddenly they don't have to honor their father and mother. Jesus says, so why have you done away with God's law for the sake of the rules that have been handed down to you? So Jesus calls them on the carpet to say, you've created this loophole so that people can get out of the having to honor their mother and father if they give their gifts to the temple instead of their mom and dad. And Jesus calls them hypocrites for this. And I think what Jesus was doing was holding up this mirror so that the Pharisees could see, hopefully, and some of them did eventually, could see that parts of their religious practice had become more a matter of convenience and control than it was an outflowing of a loving heart. Jesus was critiquing the religion of his day because it had become more a matter of convenience and control than it was about an outflowing of a loving heart. And I think his point was that just because something's been handed down by tradition or handed down by the elders doesn't make it immune from criticism. And this is where we come back to how we started today. Just because something has always been done that way doesn't make it the right way to do it. Doesn't make it immune from criticism. So whatever the original value was behind the rules of hand washing, over time it had become this burden of precision, this expectation of laws. And so Jesus then goes on to cast this vision for what it could look like to focus not on the external part of the ritual, but try to remember what the ritual is supposed to illuminate in the first place. So listen to this, verse 10. Jesus called the crowd near and said, and I love that, called the crowd near is like, Pharisees, I'm done with you. You're not going to understand what I'm saying. Everybody else, come here for a second. And Jesus said, listen to this. It's not about what goes into the mouth that contaminates the person. It's what comes out of the mouth that contaminates that person. Which is to say, eating a meal with dirty hands is not the thing that's going to make an impact on your connection with God. If we've gotten to the point where we think that you have to have proper hand washing ritual in order to be quote unquote right with God, then y'all, we have completely missed the point here. We've gotten way off track. It's not about what goes into your mouth, but what comes out of it. And later Jesus clarifies and says, because what comes out of your mouth is a reflection of your heart. And it's in the heart space where you can begin to have a sense of disconnect from the divine. And when I was thinking about this week, for me, this is not hard to imagine, this whole scenario. It's not hard for me to imagine how over time and across culture, things can get to where they got in the story with the washing of hands in this ritual. If we go back to what I was saying about the evolution from movement to institution, I can imagine how something that began as an internal experience or began as this internal reflection, over time might transform into something with an external expression. This feels natural and normal to me. Meaning it might start with this internal value of the heart is the seat of connection with God. It is here that you can maybe drift from the love of God by harboring hatred and thoughts of revenge. It is in here that you can decide to lie to your neighbor. It is in here that you can deceive your family. It is in here where those decisions about how you're going to act in the world can be nursed and fed. And it's not difficult for me to imagine how humans, the meaning-making machines that we are, we long to create external symbols and external rituals that illustrate our internal beliefs. So it's really not hard for me to imagine how it can start with like, here is where the thing matters. How do we symbolize this? Well, we symbolize it by this external washing of ourselves to sort of point to an internal cleanliness. And I don't think that move in and of itself is all that, like it's just an innocuous trying to create meaning and symbol and ritual. And I think that's a beautiful thing I think that's part of what set Homo sapiens apart from our ancient ancestors. But you can imagine then how over time, practices like this become disconnected from their initial purpose, and eventually it becomes more about the external thing and how to do it right and how to do it properly than it was ever about what it was trying to connect and illustrate in the first place. This is not a hard journey for me to imagine. And I can see how even people with good intent, oftentimes people with the best intent are part of this process where it now has boundaries over how to do it right. It now has like certain expectations on who can do it and who can lead it and what it means to do it right. Like all of that for me doesn't necessarily imply nefarious, malicious intent. I guess is my point. It's my long-winded way of saying when that happens, When the focus becomes more on the external ritual rather than the internal thing that the symbol is pointing to, it's not, for me anyway, evidence that there is a bad actor who is just after control and manipulation and power. I can see how over time these things they become that way, sometimes without us even noticing. This is why I think the practice of the self-critiquing religion is so important, because these things can tend to get away from us. So what I've noticed happening, and this is how I'll wrap it up, is that a lot of times with religion specifically, and this can be true about all institutions, but religion specifically, we can get so accustomed to doing a certain thing a certain way, an external thing, that over time they become as if these were God-appointed way to do it. We do a thing so long a certain way that over time we're like, oh, this is the way that God would want us to do it. It went from, we've always done it this way, to now synonymous with, God hath declared it shall be done this way forevermore, amen. And when we start believing that the, quote, rules of the elders, or the traditions handed down to us, when we start believing that these are divinely mandated and cannot be changed or edited, when we become reluctant to critique them and assess them and evaluate them, that is when I think religion and any institution begins to manifest more potential harm than good. When they become immune from critique, when they become immune from assessment and change and adaptation. And I think this is how, over time, a religion, i.e. Christianity, that began as a movement, i.e. this radical way of forgiveness over revenge and compassion over hatred and mercy over sacrifice, over time we have seen this religion get to a place where it sees women as inferior to men. It gets to a place where emotional well-being is an afterthought. It gets to places where a person, if their sexual orientation is anything other than solely desiring of the opposite sex, and that is seen as somehow an abomination or abhorrent or not as good. Or we get to a religion where only certain kinds of people can be leaders. Like, you see how if the religion is not critiqued and assessed from within, then it gets to places that I think is very far from where the movement began. So for me, the rules handed down by the elders, and that phrase can mean a number of things. The traditions given to us, even some of the doctrines handed down by the church fathers. On some ways, they can be interesting, they can be helpful, they can be, sometimes they can be useful, but by no means do I think we should feel beholden to them. And that's just my personal opinion, and I know growing up Protestant, that was, I guess if I grew up Catholic, I might have a different feel. I might actually be more anti-tradition, or I might have a more soft spot for tradition, but whatever. I am what I am, and for me, I feel like we ought not feel beholden to the rules handed down by the elders. Especially, I think, because in most cases, the elders in our tradition means like old straight dudes. And if all we're going to do is just follow the traditions of old straight dudes, and look, I'm not picking on old straight dudes. I hope to be one myself someday. We have value too, but if as a painter, all you do is create paintings with shades of blue, yeah, you can create some neat things. You can create some pretty skyscapes and some nice ocean, but if all you do is ever paint with blue, you're missing out on all the beautiful hues of yellows and oranges and reds and purples. So part of why for me, like, we can't just be beholden to the rules of the elders is because the rules of the elders have been a very specific demographic. And I think we're missing out on a lot of what could be. And I also think, look, a lot of, quote, the rules of the elders made sense back when they were first designed. Fine, I get it. But we live in entirely different worlds now. And we have to be able to adapt and update and transform and self-critique. And that's why I go back to this idea that baked into the example of Jesus is this posture of self-critique, is this posture of assessing our religious tradition and our heritage to say, Not how do we preserve this thing that has been done because it's always been done this way, but have we lost the plot? Have we gotten off course? Are we adding burdens to people? Are we moving people towards division and hatred and chaos instead of mercy, compassion, and love? And I think that is what we try to do here at Sojourn. And sometimes for us that means dusting off layers of institutional BS that has obscured the heart of the original vision. Sometimes that looks like directly calling out leaders and groups who've sided with empire or lorded their power over others. And sometimes that looks like Marie Kondoing parts of our own religious heritage. Thank you, tradition, for how you've served us in the past, but you're no longer sparking joy. In fact, for many of us, you are robbing it. And we need to rest. So that's why I think sometimes we can get strong church vibes from Sojourn and sometimes weird vibes from Sojourn. That's why sometimes I think it's really obvious that Sojourn can be a Christian church, and other times it's a little more obscure. And for me, this is one of the ways that we kind of bob and weave in this lane. And for me, for me personally, this is just me. My wife and co-pastor might have a different motivation. But for me, part of it is, that's because I think Jesus wanted us to take this posture and run with it. Keep reforming, keep asking the questions. Keep adapting, keep evolving, keep changing. All right, I'll leave you with this. This is how this story here in Matthew 15 ends, verse 12. Then the disciples came and said to Jesus in private after that whole public interaction was over. They said, "Hey, do you know that the Pharisees were offended by what you just said?" I think that was pretty obvious. They were offended. And then Jesus said this: "Every plant that my heavenly Father didn't plant is going to be pulled up. So leave the Pharisees alone." Leave the Pharisees alone. They are the blind leading the blind. Why do I want to end here? Well, because this word that we translate in English, leave them alone, is the Greek word aphemi. And the Greek word aphemi literally does mean to just set free, to leave alone. But most of the time in our New Testaments, do you know what aphemi gets translated as? Forgive. Forgive. To set someone free, to leave them alone, is to forgive. Forgive the Pharisees. Forgive the Pharisees. They are blind, leading the blind. Forgive them. And this is another thing that we try to accomplish here at Sojourn, learning this radical compassion of forgiveness for those who've used, quote, the rules of the elders to turn religion into weapons of control and shame. How can we have compassion for them? Speaking truth to power is necessary, it's good, we do it, we'll continue to do it, but also practicing the art of forgiveness toward the powerful, that's black belt level spirituality. I'm not there yet, I'm still working on it, but it is a North Star for me. It is a thing to aspire to. It is a thing to aspire to acknowledge that all of us are doing the best we can with what we have and what we've been given. Forgive them. Forgive them. It doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior. We get to call that out all day long, just like Jesus did here. But may we also one day be able to do this posture where we can combine prophetic condemnation with radical compassion. That's what we aim to do here at Sojourn, and I'm really thrilled that you're here doing it with us. I'm going to invite the band to come up and do one more song with us this morning. And then we'll transition into communion, which, if you notice the energy that came down, it's because Pastor Kate brought all of our kiddos back down so that we can take communion together after the song out in the courtyard. So I'll turn it over to you, and we'll be back here in a minute.
lost and weary traveler, searching for the way to go. Stranger, heavy-hearted, longing for someone you know. And may you find a light, and may you find a light, and may you find a light to guide you home.
There are weary travelers searching everywhere to go. Strangers who are searching, longing deeply to be known.
May you find a light, and may you find a light, and may you find a light to guide you home. And may you find a light, and may you find a light, and may you find a light to guide you home. And may you find a light, may you find a light, and may you find a light to guide you home.
So, what is the light that can guide us back home? What is it? If we think of this song in the context of what I shared, and if part of our mission at Sojourn and part of our tradition of Christianity is to self-critique and assess and figure out where we've got, what is the light that leads us back home? How do we know when we've gotten off course? And I think the light is not overly complicated. I submit to you love. I submit to you kindness. I submit to you compassion. If any of the rules of the elders are not leading towards these things, my friends, we know where we ought to go. Towards the light, towards love, towards forgiveness, towards compassion. Is how I see it anyway. I'm going to invite you to take communion with us this morning. So we do it, I don't know, in pandemic, post-pandemic world, we've tried a bunch of different variations. The way we're going to do it today is Kate's in the back there setting up single-serve elements. If you came with someone today and you feel comfortable sharing your little pack of crackers or sharing your juice box, that's great. Feel free to do that. If you are like my wife and don't want to share, wait, did I just throw you under the bus? Sorry, love. Okay, I like that bus just fine. You can get your own stuff too, that's fine. But go ahead and let's grab our elements, and then we'll head out into the courtyard and we'll circle up and we'll take our masks off and be outside and take communion together as a community outside. Sound good? Yep. All right, you want to just provide a little transitional music so people feel like not super awkward walking in the quiet. Grab what you need and then we'll be out there and we will take together. you want a mic, babe? No?